Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today I'll be reviewing the new Japanese breakfast album for Melancholy Brunettes and Sad Women. For Melancholy Brunettes and Sad Women is the fourth album by the American indie pop and indie folk band Japanese Breakfast, and coming off of their previous album Jubilee in 2021, I must say that my expectations for this one were quite high, just with how beautiful and lush Jubilee was, with the diverse range of influences taken on that album, with it easily being one of my favourite albums of its respective year. And this album, while not quite as lush and soulful as Jubilee, still goes for a much more lo-fi folky sound. The album starts off with the track Here Is Someone, which just gives it a really nice simple start and some really beautiful guitar work. And overall the track just builds in a really nice way, adding various layers of lots of different instruments and arrangements that sound quite interesting. And on the whole, the very diverse selection of instruments and arrangements really reminds me a lot of Ichigo Aoba's newest album, which I also recently reviewed. Orlando in Love is a really nice, much slower track, and I think the vocals on this track are also particularly good. However, I think that outside of the vocals, this track does actually have very little to offer, and just really feels quite lacking compared to the opening track, which had so much diversity to show off. Honey Water is a really nice, almost shoegaze-leaning song, with the very repetitive guitar riff with quite heavy reverb, as well as a lot of the effects in the background. And also the really nice, almost whispered vocals also add a lot to the vibe of this track. And even despite all of the reverb and all the heavy effects going on, this track actually still has some really nice polish to it, especially just with how well the layers build throughout the track. Mega Circuit is just another very simple folk pop song. And much like the song Orlando in Love, I think the simplicity of this track really works against it, overall just making it feel so lacking, which I think is a real shame because there was actually a lot of potential on this track. However, just the overall lack of things happening on the song really just make it quite boring in my opinion. Little Girl continues the very simple and stripped back feel of the album. However, I think on this track it actually works a lot better, with the simplicity being really used in favour of the track. The very simple acoustic guitar along with a lot of the effects used in the chorus all just sound absolutely amazing together, and this is just a really nice track that you can really just get lost in with how atmospheric it all sounds. Later is a very simple track, but is still really nice, with some really beautiful vocal harmonies as well as some really lovely background effects as well. I do like how the guitar playing on this track does take a bit more of a backseat, being even more soft and much more subtle than the rest of the album, which I really think just gives a chance for a lot of the other elements of the track to really show off how good they are. Picture Window is a much more upbeat track and just has overall a very lush and playful feel, which is quite a nice tone shift after a lot of much more simple and stripped back folk pop songs. However, I think the mixing on this track could be a lot better, with the drumming in particular I think being very overpowering and just feeling a lot louder than many of the other instruments and really kind of drowns them out, which is quite a shame because the song could have been a lot better I think. Men in Bars, being a more piano-based song, is a nice sound change that just does a great job at providing the album with a bit more diversity in its instrumentation. However, it does kind of feel like that is the only purpose that the song really serves, once again just sounding quite generic and boring outside of that. And also even the feature from Jeff Bridges being perfectly okay, but just sounding a bit out of place and really not that needed. Winter in LA is much the same. However, overall does actually have quite a nice build-up to it, especially in the latter half, and many of these sounds and arrangements that he used remind me a lot of some of the best moments on their previous album Jubilee. And finally, Magic Mountain is just a nice little closing track, and has a reasonably good diverse selection of instruments, including a chime and also a cello that both sound really good. However, while on paper this track does close the album well and just does a good job of being the closing track, once again it just feels really generic and lacks, I think, a lot of the soul and the passion of some of their previous works, with it really just feeling like a textbook closing track without actually doing all that much to leave the listener with that much to think about. And so overall, while this is just a nice little folk pop album with some reasonably diverse instruments and arrangements used and some nice moments that are being showcased reasonably consistently throughout the album, I think overall it just really lacks soul and lacks passion, with there being so much filler on the album and so many songs that really have very little, if anything, that's that interesting on offer. And so I'll be giving this album a 6 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.